And then you're on the clock, Primetime.
Welcome all. It's draft night again on Primetime Mock, the show where we bring you a different industry draft with special guests from all over the fantasy community every single week. I'm the host of this draft party, Mark Shue. You can find me on Twitter at Primetime Mock and head on over to YouTube and subscribe to the Primetime Mock channel. We've got a great draft for you tonight. We're drafting RBs, and we have a great group of guests. We're going to jump right into it. First up, from BallBlast Football, Fantasy Pros, and Fighting Chance Fantasy, it's Kevin Tompkins. Kevin, what's going on?
Oh, living the dream here in North Dakota. Thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it.
Happy to have a zero RB guy here on the show tonight.
Yeah, this is as robust as I'm ever going to get. So, little history tonight.
Like I said, you're going to take an early round running back, and you're going to like it, Kevin. And you know what? You can be there to hype us up at the end of the draft when we have all the players that nobody wants, right? That's the one.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Next up, the host of the Hot Take podcast and a ranker and writer for GuillotineLeagues.com. He's the fantasy professor, Steve Toroni. Steve, how are you?
Doing great. Thanks for having me. This is awesome to be here drafting with you guys. I can't think of any other way to start my Thursday night. Yeah, we are going very robust RB tonight. It's a lot of high tea in this room.
That's right. Steve, because I'm so curious, tell me a little bit about Guillotine Leagues.
Guillotine Leagues is if you've ever played any sort of role-playing game that has a hardcore setting, when you die in that game, in that hardcore setting, you are out. So the lowest score every week is eliminated. So week 1, if you are 12th out of 12 teams, you're done for the rest of the year. It sounds like a crazy concept, and it sounds like, it may be a waste of time. I promise you, when you're in a Guillotine League, it takes priority, even over bigger leagues that you might be a part of.
I've got to tell you, it's intriguing to me. I've heard about it maybe last year. I'm very intrigued. I'm thinking about trying to start one here maybe over this year and see if we can get some people, some listeners, some subscribers here to join this Guillotine League with me. All right, next up from CBS Sports, the Fantasy Football Today podcast, it's Dave Richard. Dave.
What's up, Mark? I wanted to take beef and cheddar, and I have French dip and Swiss on my queue. This was an Arby draft. And then I realized you meant the position, not the restaurant. So
either way, we've got the meats, Dave. Don't you worry.
Yeah. I was horsey sauce, really underrated sauce, by the way. Great to be here. Never done anything like this before, where I'm drafting one specific position. Thanks to you and to everybody for making my first pick really easy by getting Christian McCaffrey at the 101.
Yeah, nobody in this room really wanted to take that 101. That was for sure. But I guess you should be happy that we left it for you, Dave.
I'm pleased. It was easy. Now, if everybody could just not draft Derrick Henry so I can get him with 201, I will feel a lot better about myself.
That's right. All right, next up from Fantasy Pros, Football Guys and Going for Two, it's Jeff Bell. How are you, Jeff?
I'm great, Mark. I'm excited. I as well have never done anything like this, so it's a new experience and plenty of tea flowing through the room as we take our running backs.
That's right. Casey Kasem couldn't be with us tonight. We do need some more ladies in this room, but it's nice to have a fellas night every once in a while, for sure. Okay, next up from the True North Fantasy Football podcast, we've got Nastic. Jim.
How's it going, man? Thanks for inviting me on here. Saw who was in this, and I jumped definitely for this. Never done anything like this. Definitely crazy.
Yeah, it's a new draft party every single week. We have fun here, and you never know who's going to show up. So we're happy to bring everybody from everywhere within this community together and just have play the game we love. All right, and he's an injury expert and DFS analyst for the Fantasy Footballers. It's Matthew Betz. Matthew.
Fellas, what's going on? I'm super excited to be on this with you guys tonight. Like you all, this is a new experience for me. Hopefully we can talk about some injuries here tonight. I think that's why I'm on the show. But I'm really excited to join you guys and talk running backs here and do this draft. So thanks for having me.
we're going to throw it to you for injuries all the time. Just tap us on the shoulder. No. We need to talk about this, right?
I'm ready.
And last but not least, but mostly because I left him off the show sheet, from NBC Sports Edge, it's John Daigle. John.
To be fair, I should never open for Dave should never open for me anyhow. Like, it should be the other way around. So let's start there. It's fitting. It's fitting that you forgot my name. That's fair. Also, North Dakota. Kevin, how is the weather right now? Because I'm still lingering around Texas from FSGA and tried to go for a run as I normally do this afternoon. It's 95 degrees here. Could not get far, admittedly, and I gave up and walked back to the hotel.
Dude, it was 94 today here, and last week it was 100.
Okay, so I have no right to be complaining then. I apologize then.
Yeah, it's wild here, not gonna lie. We haven't had 100-degree temperatures in a while. So yeah, it's something else.
Well, guys, it's draft night tonight. It's second draft night of the week for me. I had my rookie draft for my contract league, my home league. And I'm excited to have one again. I'm pumped for this one here. We are talking running backs here. And before we do that, I'm going to share a couple of my picks from this draft I had this past weekend. 14-team league. I won the league last year. Had the 14th pick and ended up getting in a super flex league Mac Jones to fall to me, so I was very happy about that. Ended up with trading up. I had the 32nd and 33rd pick back to back. Traded directly up to 15, where there was a tier break for me, and I ended up getting Rashad Bateman, and then ended up finishing out the draft at 56 with Jalen Darden. I felt like it was pretty decent. Anybody else have either want to comment on or roast my picks if you want, or either tell me about any other drafts you've been going through this past few weeks?
Where did you take Mac Jones? What was your pick?
14.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So that's pretty good actually in the super flex.
Yeah.
For him to get there. I like that. And so does that mean you got Bateman at 28?
I got him at 15. I went from 32 and 33 collectively, and a future second
to move up to get Bateman.
To move up to get Bateman at 15.
I think that's a great deal for you to give up those late picks that mean almost nothing.
Yeah.
To get a player that means quite a bit potentially down the line. So good job. I'm not going to roast you for those picks.
Yeah, I think that's you're exactly right though with the tier break. I've noticed that usually the 2.03, which that's what that would be in a 12-team league. That's kind of the drafts that I've done. That's been a tier break, and I have Mac Jones inside the top 10 in Superflex, so I think you did a great job there.
And I was praying for that to happen. I mean, I was praying for it to happen, and I wasn't expecting it to happen. But when it did, I was very happy because all I've got in that league is Carson Wentz. So I really needed one, and just fantasy gods came down and just blessed me with Mac Jones. Hopefully he works out.
Speaking of tier break, you saw Dave take the clock down because now we're at that point of this draft already where we're nitpicking that RB dead zone, that third tier. So this is where the picks get actually interesting.
Are we there yet? Because that's kind of
that's opinion as well. Yeah,
eye of the beholder thing. I think we might be almost there, but we're pretty close. I think it's part of what everybody should do before they go in their draft is figure out where is that break for you at running back, and the higher up that break is. Let's just say you don't want to have J.K. Dobbins and DeAndre Swift on your team. The more likely it is that you should just go very heavy on running backs until they're gone. But some people, they've got a higher tolerance. They're happy to, get Carson or Gaskin or Mike Davis. They could probably wait to get a running back in that case. And
you got to scroll down for Mike Davis in this sleeper, by the way.
Oh yeah,
he's buried there.
Yeah,
he's buried.
They don't like him.
Well, he's probably just not ranked accordingly. He should be higher than, let's say, David Johnson. Let's start there.
Yeah.
Oh no,
that's
no.
Okay,
Monster 2 is probably a guy I'd take Mike Davis over, but
all right, I'm going to move us back to the beginning here. We've had about 3 rounds of the 8 of us come off the board now. And let's talk about those tiers because I actually really like thinking about every position in tiers, and that's how I do my draft builds. And ultimately this is what it's about, building the right draft and finding where you can find those players that are higher on one tier than the other, and maybe can help you really win out. But the first thing I want to do is really talk about the strategy of drafting a running back. What are we looking for the ideal running back? What are we looking for in terms of upside, in terms of their floor? What do we really want to see? And I'm going to start with Steve. Go ahead, Steve.
You're talking about in the first round or just in general when you're drafting?
Just in general, yeah. What are you looking for? As you're going through the draft, what are we looking for running back?
I tend to draft wide receiver heavy, so usually that ends up being like a modified 0 RB situation where I have one running back. In the first 2 rounds, I'm probably going to walk away with a running back. If I don't, then I think I would be putting myself in a situation. I think we all realize, most drafts that you do, the first 6 or 7 picks are running backs. So it's volume at the end of the day. That's the easy answer. You're looking for volume, and what running backs really have that, it's a very, very few and far, recipe for success that kind of ends where Dave was talking about, right in that middle of the 3rd round in actual drafts. And then we're seeing it right here, really in this format, that volume is kind of dissipating as we go along right here.
Sure. And as far as the top tier, I want to just talk about that top tier of running backs. Who really has a strong opinion on where that cliff ends for that number 1 running back?
You're going to get 8 different opinions.
Oh, I know, and that's what I want. Should we just go down the line? Can we do it that way? Jeff, you got a number of players you want?
Looking at this board right now, it's kind of that Clyde Edwards-Helaire is kind of right in that middle zone where everybody above that I feel very comfortable about volume and ability. He didn't exactly show us everything we wanted to see last year. We were excited about that offense, but that's kind of right where the spot that seems to drop off where you're getting into more part-time roles.
Sure. And how about Jim?
Throwing that Clyde Edwards-Helaire pick out there, eh? Oh, I'm just kidding.
Well, you got the last one.
I don't know. For me, I want really. There's 5 running backs I really, really want, and then after that, I think 6 to 12 is really interchangeable. I can wait. It doesn't really matter. I'll take the last of those guys. But there's 5 guys I really want. The guy that really surprised me, to be honest, because is Dalvin Cook at 2. I know everybody. He's getting hyped up. He had the full season, but I was talking about it on Tuesday with Scott Simpson, and he's even DFS platforms had Alexander Madison's price baked in that he was going to play at some point. They didn't even believe that Dalvin Cook was gonna go a full season, and you never see the discount on him that you get with other guys that have that injury concern outlook with them. But it is what it is.
And Steve, go ahead. Where does the cliff end for you?
I did a best ball draft today, and Zeke went at 6, and then it was 7 Nick Chubb, Jonathan Taylor at 8. So right after that, you have Aaron Jones. That's guaranteed. Cam Akers, there's question marks. Yes, he could be great, but you still don't know his utilization, and what we saw last year, I believe it, and I will draft him as such, but I'm still saying there is a question. So it's that's where really the questions start. Joe Mixon and Antonio Gibson, these are all upside guys that really haven't done it yet, in terms of what we really want from them, which is a upside of a top 5 guy for Joe Mixon. For Antonio Gibson, we can project that, but we still have J.D. McKissic there that will take targets. So I'm thinking it ends right there at Aaron Jones in terms of guaranteed RB1 volume. That's pretty much where that tier ends.
Okay, so we've got one at the back end of the second here, about pick 15, one at 9. Jim, you said what, top 5? You're right at 5.
That's what I want. I think the tier for me is top 5 guys Christian. I want Christian McCaffrey, Barkley, Kamara, Henry, And I really hummed and hawed, and I think it's hilarious that but my first 2-round picks I was tossed between was like Jonathan Taylor and Zeke, and then I was humming and hawing between Clyde Edwards-Helaire and DeAndre Swift, and Matthew Betz there took each one of my other options right after.
And Matthew, how about for you? What's that top tier RB look like for you?
I mean, if we're talking about like true top tier running backs, it's Christian McCaffrey by himself, in my opinion. If we're talking guys that I'm comfortable with as my RB1, I think I'm looking kind of more towards like, I mean, yeah, I want someone in that first row that we have on this board here, like the top with Zeke, is kind of where it ends for me. As far as would I be comfortable going wide receiver and then running back after that? Sure. You know, a guy like, you know, Aaron Jones, like you said, or Naji Harris, who's going to touch the ball 300 plus times, is potentially in that mold, but I definitely don't feel confident about it. So for me, yeah, I think the ones that I would love is right there at Zeke.
Yeah, I like that too. Yeah, Zeke, if you believe in Aaron Jones, or you know, believe that Aaron Rodgers is playing this year, maybe you have Aaron Jones in there as well. But yeah, that's kind of where I am. I'm kind of about 9. Aaron Jones, I haven't really thought about it. Jim, you got to make your pick, bud.
I know I'm humming and hawing. So
it's okay, no worries. And I would say, Matt, you're right that Christian McCaffrey definitely seems like far and away the number one guy. I do have Saquon like just slightly below, but it's really, I mean, it's hard to really even differentiate those tiers at that point. It's like it's a tier that's McCaffrey, and then a slightly smaller tier that's Saquon, and then everybody else that's just slightly below that. It's always fun trying to figure out that exact right, you know, advantage edge you're looking for with those running backs. Dave, how about you? What does your top tier look like?
The top tier for me, if we're just talking about the very best tier in fantasy, I think I'm going to be okay with McCaffrey, Cook, Kamara, Henry, and that might be it for the very top tier, because I'm concerned about Saquon still rehabbing a little bit, and there's talk that he's going to be slow to get moving. And Taylor's got tons of upside, and maybe he belongs in there too. But when I hear about where's that cutoff at running back, I think more about where is the last running back that I would look at and say, okay, if I had to, he would be my RB1. Like, and I go like Kelsey is my first round pick, and then somehow Devontae Adams there's round 2, and Tyreek Hill is there in round 3. Like, crazy situation. I end up going 0 RB, and I'm up in round 4. Where's that line? And for me, I think it's like right around where Miles Sanders went in this draft. And I still see Sanders as someone who's going to work rushing downs for Philadelphia. I'm worried about how many catches he's going to end up getting, but he's going to be their main running back. I think he's going to end up having the chance at a decent year. You go back and you watch his film from last year. He still runs with explosiveness. He just had a terrible offensive line. Things did get easier for him when Hurts was in there. And he was pretty efficient when he did play on the whole. So I wouldn't love it if he was my RB1 unless I was stacked with my first, I'll say 3 picks by the time I miracle into him in early round 4, something like that.
Yeah. I do agree about Miles Sanders. Really felt like the last guy when I made him at 304. He really did seem like just the very last guy that you could really feel comfortable with at that point. And John, go ahead with your tier break here at the top.
I have 7 guys there, and I hate parsing through them. One, because I prefer tiers, like we're talking about, because jostling and arguing about the RB 6 or 7, like we live 80 years and we die and go away forever. We don't have time to argue about fractional points in life, so screw that. But it's actually an interesting conversation, because I think, let's say Zeke is in my top tier as well, because I feel like recency bias has got the best of everyone. And it was literally worst case scenario for every scenario, not just one for Zeke last year, between missing 3 starting offensive linemen for a combined 36 games, between facing the league's second toughest rushing schedule, losing Dak Prescott. But the thing is, when Dak Prescott was healthy for those 4 games, Small sample, I know, just a month of the season, but he averaged a career high 7.5 targets every game, and he was the RB3 on the season so far. So we know personally that Dak is the MVP. It's not Zeke of that team. And everyone wants to make a big deal about Tony Pollard. Tony Pollard only averaged 7.5 touches behind Zeke last year, had one top 35 performance, and that was the one game that Zeke missed, which happens to be his only game he's missed since his freshman year at Ohio State. The dude is an Iron Man. He's only 26 years old. So despite the fact he shoulders the touches, I think everyone is slightly overrating Pollard's outlook, even though I know, like you, he is genuinely the better back right now. But the Cowboys not only don't know that, they do not care at all. And so I am just going what the front office of the organization knows and will do, and that is most likely get Zeke right back to that 25 touches per game. That's only one player. I'm sorry. The tier, though, I actually want to kick it to Matthew because Saquon Barkley's in the first tier, but I genuinely need to know if I need to bump him down to the bottom of that first tier with Aaron Jones, by the way, who I cap it off at right now due to this being limited in the first month of the season, because that could be a really big deal if like that is their plan. And if you think, Matthew, that injury is going to linger well into the year.
Yeah, I mean, listen, if it was any other running back, we could just confidently say like, yeah, they're going to, dock him and we're going to have to take away a couple projected, either touches or snaps or whatever at the start of the year. But Saquon Barkley is not any other running back. So it's a really tricky situation that I'm going to kind of sidestep around the question, Daigle. I'm sorry, man, because we don't really know. And the reason I don't, know specifically is looking at like his injury. There was news that came out from Jordan Ronan recently that basically was like, he's got this meniscus on top of the ACL, and it's going to really slow things down. They're going to be conservative. That's not new information. Like we knew that at the time of injury, or at least I knew that at the time of injury. I feel like I tried to get that out there for people, but we knew that. That's not new information. But what that does is that it slows down the rehab and the recovery process. So you'll often hear, the straightforward ACL tear, you're looking at like 9 to 12 months for this player to get back. And you add the meniscus on, it's closer to that 12 months. Now, again, that considers every running back across the NFL. This is not just any other running back. This is Saquon Barkley. And we know running backs coming off of ACL tears have higher success rates when they come back younger than 24 years old, high draft capital, and do rehab and PT before the actual surgery, which Saquon did. So to me, you could kind of make an argument both directions. I've got him at 6 to hedge a little bit and have some downside to that kind of early round ADP. And I haven't had a lot of him because of that, because I think people are kind of just assuming like, yeah, it's just an ACL and, it's Saquon, so it's totally fine kind of situation. I don't feel that way right now. I kind of need more information as the, offseason goes on. I've got him at 6, so I'm lower than consensus right now on Barkley. But if he
is 6 still in the top tier?
No, I got it like
okay.
McCaffrey, okay. Cook, and Henry right now.
Okay, because if he's healthy, I just feel like he has the archetype that he would get every single touch in that backfield. Like the 4 guys who led in carries last year are all free agents still. It's just him and Devontae Booker.
Yeah.
And I'm going to hold you.
That's the argument too. Is like, yeah, if they want to scale him back, like, what are they going to do? Like,
right,
who are they going to give the ball to, right? No, it's really fascinating. I think really training camp and preseason is going to be the tell for us. I don't think he's going to do a lot in preseason, the games, but like we just kind of need to monitor beat reporters in training camp and kind of see where he's at. So yeah, I think more realistically, like he's 100% kind of entering like October, November, not necessarily week 1. I think he plays week 1. I just don't know what that means as far as his workload.
Interesting.
Yeah, and regardless of injury, I still think, because like this draft I did earlier, I did it like an hour ago, so it's still fresh in my mind. He went 5th, and I think that's fair. I mean, regardless of injury, you still are drafting top-tier guys, McCaffrey, Cook, Henry, and Kamara, who deserves that 4th spot. He really does. I mean, he's a great player. You know what you're getting in terms of pass-catching ability. He is a game breaker type guy and deserves to be in that top tier. So even if you're like, you know what, he could be healthy, you can still feel safe, I believe, drafting Kamara over Saquon.
We know what Kamara can do in terms of ability, but it's really an open question on what the Saints offense is going to look like with the quarterbacks. And obviously we saw how he struggled with Taysom Hill at quarterback. So that does kind of concern me. It raises a question, especially when you're looking at the very top end of drafts.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. I do believe that they're going to focus more on running the ball. So, I think Latavius Murray actually has very sneaky value. He's, not being really drafted as if I think he has standalone value. I really do believe that. So he can be, maybe in the discussion as an RB3 type player. But I believe that Kamara's going to get volume. And if Winston gets the job, he's not known as a guy that necessarily throws to the running backs. But with Kamara's skill set and the lack of receiving options besides Michael Thomas, I still think that they're going to get their second best pass catcher the ball.
They'll manufacture touches for him for sure. And so if Jameis doesn't throw him the ball, that means he's going to do something wrong, or someone's wide open. The defense just made a mistake and Jameis made him pay. But the other problem that I have is that even if Jameis is the starter, you've got to assume that Taysom's going to play at least as much as he did when he was taking Drew Brees off the field. I mean, this is Jameis Winston we're talking about. So it wouldn't surprise me in the least if Taysom Hill was playing more and taking Jameis off the field more than he was when it was a Hall of Famer and Drew Brees.
That's my issue with late round Jameis Winston. Like, I understand we are one of 155,000 on underdog trying to win $1 million. So you have to get a little kooky with your lineups.
Yep.
But we know Hill's coming in inside the 10. Like, there's no way Peyton's leaving Jameis in there to throw interceptions when he can just run the ball with Hill.
I think he might put Taysom in there full time.
Sure.
I think there's a really serious chance that ends up happening because he's been with the team longer. They've been bringing him along longer. And I mean, at the first sign of Jameis Winston turning the ball over, he's going to go to Taysom Hill anyway. It wouldn't surprise me.
4-year contract.
Yeah, he's got $140 million.
Right.
Who's got a 4-year contract?
Sure, that's real.
And I'm gonna put the tinfoil hat on for a second. Does anyone feel like we're just getting really close to the NFL just being like, screw it, and we're gonna have just a couple of teams are gonna have committees like the Saints here? Like, I could see a lot of committee work going down. I mean, it happens on game to game basis, but I don't know if that's the best necessarily for development. I wonder if we start seeing more. We're going to pull you for the third. We're going to pull you for the fourth quarter and just let you play. Let the backup play 2 halves. And I mean, it already kind of happens, but I'm actually just wondering if maybe we start to see it more, especially when you have. It was reported from Schefter that it was 18 teams who were looking to change their starting quarterback. I think we're actually getting pretty close to that number at this point. But developmentally, I think the league is still very thirsty for quarterbacks, and I wouldn't be surprised if I see a lot more developmental work with some teams that don't have what they need right now.
Yeah, just meet Steve Spurrier's coming back.
We saw a little bit of the Taysom usage with Jacoby Brissett last year in Indy, and he's going to Miami, and that's a team that we did see them use that kind of committee quarterback with Tua and with Ryan Fitzpatrick. So I almost wonder if that might be a Taysom Hill type situation there in Miami, where they use Brissett inside the red zone, and that could really chip away at any value that Tua might have.
This last round is not going to be pretty for people watching, by the way.
We are in the muck right now.
Oh yeah.
Sure.
Avert your eyes.
My last 3 picks.
This looks.
I refused to draft Tevin Coleman there. I had to just draft anyone else. I couldn't do it. I dropped him in dynasty leagues recently, and then the news came out that he might be involved. I was like, whatever. Like, I don't care.
All right, guys. I'm actually thinking we can go maybe. Let's just talk about everyone's first 5 rounds. Dave, I want you to go ahead and give me just a breakdown of your first 5 rounds here.
All right, let me go about 15 minutes on McCaffrey here. I know that everybody's real shocked with that pick. Candidate for 2,000 total yards, 100 catches, double-digit touchdowns. Obviously, you're going to take him at 1. Aaron Jones is the pick right now. If Aaron Rodgers leaves Green Bay, I don't know how comfortable I'll be taking Aaron Rodgers out of guys like Akers and Naji Harris and Antonio Gibson. I might go for the younger guys there. I do expect Green Bay to use multiple running backs again, but Jones is the best pass catcher that's left, I believe. And so that really helps his profile in half and full PPR formats. He's certainly earned the spot of being a prominent fantasy running back, but I think he'd be a hell of a lot better if it's Aaron Rodgers under center instead of Jordan Love. Dobbins falling to round 3, I think it's a gift. I would love his talent. I hate where he plays. I hate that he's got to share with Gus. Hate that Lamar Jackson's going to take numbers away from him as well. There's all this talk about how they want to throw to their running backs more. I'll believe it when I see it, but I do think Dobbins is capable of being a good receiver out of the backfield. Mike Davis in round 4 is looks like he's going to be the lead guy in Atlanta. It's going to be interesting to see how that works out. But I don't think the Falcons are going to be exactly what the Titans were. They're going to be an outside zone running team. Davis can do that. He's a good pass catcher out of the backfield. He's going to share. I know there's been some talk about Kadri Allison being the guy that he shares with. That's an interesting pick. Maybe somebody takes him late in our RB-only draft. But as number 2 running backs go, I think he makes the cut, and I think he's got a shot to have a pretty decent year, certainly a decent start, because we saw him fade last year. Loved getting Leonard Fournette in round 5. Fournette is someone who I think is going to lead the Bucs backfield to begin the year. Gio is going to take the passing downs role. That's something that Fournette won't have much of a chance at, but I just think the coaches trust Fournette more now than Ronald Jones, and I think he'll make fewer mistakes. And he's one of the running backs I'll target if I'm going 0 RB or modified 0 RB. Modified 0 RB. Good offensive line, great quarterback to play off of. And he showed us in the playoffs last year that he can still be an effective running back.
Now, before we move on to John Daigle, John has timed out his pick here, and here on Primetime Mock, we like to just let anyone who gets timed out let someone else come steal their pick. So, Kevin Tompkins, why don't you come take John Daigle's pick here?
Oh, my screen froze. I thought it showed Dave timing out.
Oh no, it's you, John, buddy. I think it's Sleeper has been really kind of glitchy the past few months with their updates. So yeah, if that ever happens.
Well, Kevin can still pick it. I do have 2 players queued. I guess they're not picking it though. No big deal. It's okay.
Well, Kevin,
give me Daigle knows this. Give me the mentor, Daryl Williams.
I do know the mentor.
I love it. Yes, I was going to take him if you weren't taking him.
So is it my turn to have to get my ass kicked to the very end now?
Yeah. Well, no. We're not gonna crap on you too much, John. Let's go. Just give me your first 5 here.
Okay, so Dalvin Cook, needless to say, number 2 running back. When he came back from injury, Alexander Madison didn't have a role. Cook actually handled 220 of the team's 250 running back carries for the rest of the season. They just forgot Madison existed. So nothing to say. Cam Akers is actually my RB8 on the year. Remember that he was actually named the starter over Henderson and Malcolm Brown, then had that high ankle sprain, I believe it was, got injured, could never get healthy. As we know, they always try to come back 3 or 4 weeks into it. Never works out. Matthew can probably tell you that in depth. And then it took until that mid-season point for him to emerge as the team's starting running back. But from that point forward, was not only explosive, but averaged 20 carries per game, 5.2 yards per touch. And apparently, if you look at all the tea leaves, if coming from Rams OTAs, there is no one else being mentioned, not even Daryl Henderson. When it comes to this backfield, it is strictly Cam Akers. Chris Carson, when he came back from injury, handled 70+% of the team's running back carries. We have seen just as recently as 2 years ago that when both him and Rashad Penny are healthy, they will healthy scratch Penny at times if they don't think he serves a role. And so I just think Chris Carson, who they begged to come back, and Russell Wilson also championed to come back, that's why they re-signed Carson, is going to be a lead back most likely in that backfield. Chase Edmonds, lots of nuance, too much to get into, honestly. But I will say that if he gets the goal line role, not sure if he's going to get it. But if he does, the team still has a league-high 21 carries inside the 5-yard line, missing from last year because Kenyon Drake was the goal line runner. Thus, it's going to be either Edmonds or James Conner. And we know Edmonds is coming off the field and 2-minute drill at least. That's what Conner has said in OTAs. But this is Edmonds' contract year, and everything we're seeing, whether it's Steve Keim or Clint Kingsbury, has said that Edmonds is the starter. So we'll see if that leads to a massive amount of touches. A.J. Dillon, Gus Edwards first. Everything Dave said, absolutely true. In the 5 games Mark Ingram was healthy scratched for, Dobbins merely out-touched Edwards 62-59 and out-targeted him 6-5. Literally mirror-like workloads. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so Edwards in best ball drafts right now is actually going 7 rounds after Dobbins. I don't even know if people need to get lower on Dobbins because he is an uber-talented player, obviously more talented than Edwards, but the fact is you need to get higher on Gus Edwards. A.J. Dillon, the archetype doesn't fit to just replace Jamal Williams. That's why I also have Aaron Jones jammed into the first tier. A.J. Dillon has totaled 23 catches going all the way back to his freshman year at Boston College. He's not that type of running back. Having said that, he is a Derrick Henry type of running back. And we've seen what Derrick Henry has done since he was unleashed over Dion Lewis. Really quick, funny antecedent. Remember that the reason Derrick Henry was almost out of the league is because Matt LaFleur played Dion Lewis over him for a season and a half. And then J.D. McKissic simply put in these rounds 100-plus targets. Like, you have to dig into Pro Football Reference to see the target leaders from last year, and you look up and J.D. McKissic is right there. And I see it all the time, and I still don't believe it, but it exists. And then Damian Williams, even though I did admittedly want Wayne Gallman here, because I never draft the first running back, no matter how talented I think in this instance Raheem Mostert or Trey Sermon is. The first running back in a three-headed committee is never going to happen. We know that last year, Shanahan said it himself, the team's third running back actually led the league in snaps at that position. And the past 2 years, the 49ers have totaled and accumulated the most fantasy points among backfields. So Gallman, I believe actually everything out of OTAs, he's the number 2 running back right now for Jeff Wilson, who we know is going to open on the PUP list. So I'm just taking him as a last-round flyer. But I do like Damian Williams, who we know his best thing he did with Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs was running the wheel route. So he's going to be the receiving back, especially if they bring Tariq Cohen along slowly. I'm so sorry for taking all the time. Go and don't toss anything to me again.
No worries, John. No worries. We love having you here. So go ahead, Jeff. Give me your first few picks here, first 5.
So I'm regretting my choice here with Saquon Barkley a little bit after hearing Mr. Betz' great breakdown and kind of where the rest of the room lies on a half-point PPR. But, you know, we've seen the Giants' defense drastically improve. They were top 10 in points allowed last year. We've seen the weapons that they put around Daniel Jones. So I'm taking him just on the upside. Last year, going in through the draft season, he was consensus 1 or 2, whatever pick you were going to take him. So I'm gonna gamble that he returns to that level here with the 3rd pick. Antonio Gibson with my 2nd choice. That's probably another guy that Mr. Betz is not going to be a big fan of with everything that's going on there. But he's a guy that I think is most likely out of in that tier to really ascend to the top 5. We saw the usage with Christian McCaffrey, with Ron Rivera in Carolina. We know that Antonio Gibson has those receiving chops. It just seems like he's the swing in this spot where he could drastically improve and be a consensus top 5 back next year, very likely. And then David Montgomery, he's supposed to be faster. That's what I saw the other day. He's now running faster. So anytime a guy just starts running as faster his 3rd year in the league, I'm going to take it. I do think that he's a little bit more locked into volume than maybe what we expect. I like Damian Williams a lot, and I think that he's kind of going to be that second back there. But if Montgomery, we saw him at the end of last year really run with the job, and I think that there's some likelihood that he does the same thing to start this year. Javonte Williams was just a swing on upside in that spot. I think maybe between him and Trey Sermon might have been the 2 biggest upside backs on the board. And locking in, feeling like I had 3 starters, I just was going to swing for that rookie upside. James Robinson, that could just kind of felt like he was the highest guy on the board, and I worry that there's a very low ceiling, but weekly utility type player. It almost strikes me. I'm not sure what kind of role he's going to have in the passing game, which would crush you in a normal PPR. In a half-point PPR, it's not quite as bad. Just presents a floor guy where he's going to fill in for bye weeks, fill in for injuries. He's going to get you some points. It may be touchdown dependent. He might get there. Tony Pollard, another a handcuff, a swing on upside that if something goes down with Zeke, he's a top, maybe an RB1. And so it seemed appropriate to take the swing on upside there. Darrington Evans is a guy that I'm really high on. I just think that there is potential that they tried to use Jeremy McNichols a little bit in relief of Derrick Henry last year. And Jeremy McNichols, we kind of know what kind of guy he is, whereas Darrington Evans, he might come in and be the pass-catching back for that team, and they might see some utility with leaving him on the field because they got Julio Jones and they have A.J. Brown, fantastic options. But outside of those, they could be really lacking for receiving options and just skill position options. So there is a chance, in my mind, that Darrington Evans could be a guy that they use in that offense. And then Booker, I just had to handcuff my guy. They had the first-round pick.
To your point, Derrick Henry is probably an outlier player, but he does have, if you include postseason games, 827 touches the past 2 years. And that's why I love the Darrington Evans pick. I'm taking him in a lot of my last round best ball leagues as well.
Yeah, I've been grabbing him everywhere that I can. I grabbed him in the FC Eliminator a whole bunch, and so I just think he's undervalued, it seems like, in my mind, of what we could get on the upside.
Oh, for sure. Definitely. Let's see. I'll skip over me and I'll do mine at the end here. Kevin, go ahead with yours.
Yeah, so why not just talk about Derrick Henry? That's very concerning about his touch, his touch numbers. But you know what? Derrick Henry is an absolute outlier, and I think history is not on the side of running backs that just amass. I think it was 378 carries last year. But you know what? I think that this year he's going to see less stacked boxes now with Julio and AJ Brown there. So I think that's still the bottom of that first tier for me at running back. Naji Harris, I think you'll see him start to creep up as we get into August, into the first round of redraft. I mean, volume, opportunity, it's all there for Naji Harris. The line is a concern, but I think them taking Naji Harris in the first round represents a philosophy shift for the Steelers that, hey, we don't want, dusty Ben Roethlisberger to throw the ball 45 times a game. So Naji Harris, I think, is a really, really nice volume play. Myles Gaskin, one thing about the Dolphins is that when they had one guy, they tended to use him. And yes, that was with Chan Gailey. Now they have dual offensive coordinators. But I still think that even with Salvin Ahmed back there, I think Myles Gaskin was certainly a lot better than people anticipated. Tea leaves, Dolphins didn't draft a running back. They have that Dokes guy, but I think Gaskin's certainly well worth a mid-round pick in drafts, and I like him as my third running back here. Raheem Mostert, whenever he has played, he's balled out. Say what you want about Shanahan backs and, taking the cheapest guy, but, I like Mostert, and I think with the Jeff Wilson injury, I think that's going to skew a few more touches at the beginning of the year to Mostert, and if he runs with it, I think he can fend off Sermon a little bit. I think Sermon's going to find his way to get some touches in that offense, but I think Mostert will still have a role. And then Kenyon Drake, that's a very ambiguous running back room in Las Vegas with Josh Jacobs, and I think Drake's going to get the pass catching work with that. And then if something happens to Jacobs, I think Kenyon Drake gets a lion's share of that role. So those first 5 picks, I'm very happy with.
Yeah, and give me like a quick 30 seconds on your last 3. Just a couple words on each one.
Yeah, Jamal Williams. He's been one of my targets. I probably had the most exposure to him. I just think he's going to be very well utilized in Detroit with DeAndre Swift there still, but I think Williams will still have a role. Latavius Murray, we talked about him a little bit, but I think he still has a role, certainly with Kamara there. We've seen him for the last couple of years. And then Marlon Mack. Say what you want about his Achilles injury, but Indianapolis brought him back still. Frank Reich likes to use multiple running backs. I think Mack will, have a bit of a role, and we'll see what happens with Jonathan Taylor if he can really realize that upside.
Jim, you're getting called out here.
That's okay.
You a quarterback guy, Jim?
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
If it would have been an all QB draft, I would have probably been more in my element.
Yeah, that's all right. Hey, give us your running backs though.
So I think it's pretty funny that I hummed and hawed in the first 2 rounds for sure on who I was going to take, and Betz took the guys I was humming and hawing right after. Jonathan Taylor, as a rookie, exploded on the scene, over 1,100 rushing yards. I think he had 300 or 400 receiving yards. I was pro Swift prior to actually BallBlast article on, but she said she put out some very, very good points about Clyde Edwards-Helaire over Swift. Same offense, better quarterback. Things hasn't changed. Where Swift everything's changed for DeAndre Swift. Not talent wise, obviously, but so I was humming and hawing there. So I just kind of tried to take the best offense that I saw. So I took Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Again, I'm in the back, so it gets pretty thin once I'm hitting round 3. A lot of my guys started getting sniped up real quick. I would have really liked to get David Montgomery in round 3. I didn't think he was going to fall that far, but he got hope. So I took Kareem Hunt. It's a half PPR, and the fact that I can get the backfield mate of Nick Chubb, who went in the first round, in round 3, when he put up 5 RB1 weeks last year for you in half PPR, I think that's pretty good. Round 4 now, I'm just trying to grab who I think is going to be goal line back. So again, I was in between Damian Harris and James Conner, because I think those are the guys who are going to get the roles. Very volatile, but they seem to fit the mold. I'm a little higher on Damian Harris, just me personally, because I think Chase Edmonds might get that role, but who really knows? And then I took Philip Lindsay because of his statement about putting the team on his back. It's an ambiguous backfield back there. I know they got a few guys back there, but really it's anybody's game. I mean, I don't really know if you want anybody from Houston, but again, I'm in the back, and it's round 5, and a lot of good running backs already been taken. Then, my 6, 7, 8, I kind of wanted to throw up a little bit. Just Alexander Madison. I don't see anybody behind Dalvin Cook. I talked about it before. He played last year full season, but there is that price baked into him. Is he going to miss time? Is he not going to miss time? Tevin Coleman, again, ambiguous backfield back there. Everyone's projecting a rookie, Michael Carter, to get the gig there, but I think it's probably going to be a 3-way split where they all do different things. And Salah Smart is going to utilize them as they do different things. And then Malcolm Brown back there, to be honest, I'm tossing him in a lot of dart throws there because as good as Myles Gaskin is, Malcolm Brown can feed around that goal line if they get there. He's a big back. He has his way in there. And if Gaskin goes down, I think Malcolm Brown's gonna get a big workload. So that's it there.
They've already talked up Malcolm Brown actually as the short yardage back. Apparently, Brian Flores saw that's exactly how Brown would use it with the Rams. So I worry he's going to be a nuisance like Jordan Howard was and like a thorn in our side and have 3 yards and 2 touchdowns every week.
Sure. Yeah, I could definitely see it. I mean, even in a couple of those Gurley years, I feel like, or no, was it Henderson and Malcolm Brown where that was happening? It
happened a little bit to Gurley.
Yeah, it happened a little bit to Gurley too. As is the Gurley story, the past couple of years and how he's deteriorated is just it's so sad. I mean, it's not like anything I've seen recently. I mean, like, and Matthew, I'm going to have you go here to get you out of here. But talk to me about Gurley for 1 second here.
It's tough, man. I mean, you're looking at a guy who has a history of the ACL, right? And then everyone, this is kind of the issue with like fantasy Twitter and what we see is like, oh, it's just an ACL, you're good to go. Not always. Yeah. The arthritis rates increase exponentially a couple years down the line in people that do and don't have ACL tears. So it really just depends on like how much that player is used, how their injury history develops over time, a couple of those things. But yeah, I mean, you look at kind of the advanced analytics and advanced statistics and metrics that you look at for running backs. He's toast, man. He's done, unfortunately. But I can go right into my draft real quick. If you want any analysis on Ezekiel Elliott, you just got to listen to Daigle from about 20 minutes ago. Couldn't have said it better myself. Yes. Literally nothing has changed with this offense except for the fact that every single person was injured, and now no one wants Zeke. I don't understand when last year he was going as a top 4 pick, pretty much consensus. So happy to get him at 8. This is where I just don't even like my team. I'm gonna be honest with you guys.
Well, you got the back end of the draft here.
Yeah, well, I guess I chose it, so I did it to myself. But I was between Swift and Dobbins. I'm always gonna lean with the pass catching back, and like Dave said, I'll believe that they're gonna throw to Dobbins when they actually do it. Say what you want about the Lions. They're gonna be an awful team this year. I still can't get over the kneecaps quote. But this team is going to be bad. When you look at the competition, even if Todd Gurley comes in, like I said, I think he's done. So if it's Swift and Williams, I think Swift can catch the football and that'll be fine. Any PPR setting. Same goes for ETN. First round NFL draft pick, right? Like you don't take a running back in round 1, period. But if you are going to take one, you better use them. So Travis Etienne clearly is going to be part of the game plan. Everyone nervous about, is he running routes as a wide receiver? Are they going to convert him? I kind of view it as a good thing. Like I want the back that's going to catch passes, and obviously playing with his college quarterback and Trevor Lawrence is never a bad thing either. So love that. And then, for James Conner, it's at this point in the draft, it's like, let's find guys that are going to touch the football. And James Conner is going to come in and have a role alongside Chase Edmonds. I'm not going to lie. I'm not super excited about James Conner. But again, at this point in the draft, we're picking at straws here. Michael Carter has kind of been the guy that, has gotten the most hype about potentially being the lead back there. I get the Tevin Coleman stuff, but looking at how he played in San Francisco, I mean, he was awful. He was so bad out there in San Francisco. He's another guy that's kind of been around for a while. So give me the fresh legs there with Carter. And then at this point, I want pass catching backs, like late in drafts, especially late in only running back drafts. Give me the guys who are going to catch the football. So I'll take Naheem Hines here, and then James White. For White, really, like if Mac Jones starts, that's the best case scenario. Obviously, if it's Cam for a while, that's not good news. But if Mac Jones is there, we could see him kind of deliver the football underneath the White. Last pick in the draft, I don't think Chuba Hubbard is that good. I'm going to be honest with you guys. But if Christian McCaffrey goes down, that is a smash pick at the very back of the last draft.
Those are the best pick. He's not even really good, but
that is my draft there.
Mike Davis wasn't good till he was either. So
that's
you
right.
never know. You never know, man.
That's absolutely right. Matthew, do you want to sign off? I know you gotta get going here.
Yeah, we got to record the Ballers DFS show right after this, so I'm going to log off. But, fellas, it was a ton of fun. It was the first time on a show for a lot of you guys, so really appreciate the time. And if any has any questions about any injuries to this stuff, just hit me up on Twitter. Happy to help.
And why don't you just give him your Twitter handle, Matthew?
Yeah, for sure. It is at @TheFantasyPT.
Thank you so much for coming, man. We really appreciate it, and we're happy to chop it up with you anytime.
Absolutely, man. Appreciate you having me on. See you guys.
Take it easy.
All right.
See you, Betz.
All right, we're here on Primetime Mock, and I want to get back to we've got a couple more here. We got Steve. Go ahead. Give us your draft, Steve.
Yeah, Nick Chubb, I think I have an affinity for Nick Chubb. I think that Zeke I probably would have ranked higher and would probably take him at that 6th spot. But, Nick Chubb, he scored 9 touchdowns in 12 games last year, only played 12 games. When he came back from injury, he had at least 15 touches in 4 or 5 straight games. I mean, that is his baseline, is he going to get 15 carries? Yeah, it. And, when he got back from injury, it's not like he was Austin Eckler, catching the football, but they started to use him a little bit more, at the end of the year when they really needed him, when they wanted to win games, they started to give him a couple more targets. He ended up getting 5 targets in one game, 3 targets in another. You can't project that for Nick Chubb, but he actually is a very talented pass catcher. Of course, Kareem Hunt has that role. But he's going to score touchdowns. He's going to get volume. I project the best year we've seen from Nick Chubb. So you walk away with Chubb as your RB1, you should be feeling pretty good. Austin Eckler, the fall to me at the 206. I mean, that's a steal. Might be the steal of the draft, to be honest. I mean, he is, the RB1 for the Chargers by a wide margin. I thought Josh Kelly was going to do something last year. I mean, he really didn't, unless he takes a big level up. And Justin Jackson is meh. So it's really Austin Eckler, and he is the wide receiver 2 on this team. The targets are going to funnel to Keenan Allen, Austin Eckler. That's just how this offense is going to go. You got Justin Herbert, who's going to level up in his second year. So I really like that. Josh Jacobs in the 3rd round, I understand that, a lot of people are off of Josh Jacobs, but it really is bringing him value. So Josh Jacobs is, dipping into like the 4th, 5th round in redraft leagues or best ball leagues. Then you have Kenyon Drake going into like the 9th or 10th round. Both of these guys I think are value. You can't have both. Like, all right, Josh Jacobs is going to be bad, so also Kenyon Drake isn't going to get a lot. So he should be a 9th, 10th round pick. If you think that Josh Jacobs should be a 5th round pick, then maybe Kenyon Drake should be more like a 7th round pick. But Josh Jacobs is still going to have a big role in this team, and he's going to be an RB2. I don't see him dropping out of that, RB2 discussion, falling behind at RB24 or something like that. Melvin Gordon in the 4th round, way back in 2020, he was the RB12 overall. I mean, I'm not saying that he's going to be an RB1 again in 2021, but it might take Javonte a little bit of time, especially on 3rd downs. Melvin Gordon is a proven pass catcher. If Teddy Bridgewater wins this job, which I think he will, we really liked the fantasy options for the Panthers last year. I mean, he supported 3 wide receivers and a running back, whether it was McCaffrey or Mike Davis. So if Melvin Gordon is out there with Bridgewater, I think he can do some damage. And he's falling into like the 9th round in best ball drafts right now. Javonte is going way ahead of him. I like Javonte a lot. I think he can take the role. But starting off, at least, you get your first quarter of the year, you want to draft in quarters sometimes, your first 4 games, I think you're pretty solid with Melvin Gordon as your like RB4. Sure. And then Ronald Jones, my 5th round pick here. Just like the offense, Tampa Bay, you want the running back for Tom Brady. Even though that's not necessarily, the common train of thought, you actually want the running back on a Tom Brady-led offense. And if he's going to, get any sort of goal line work, Ronald Jones, that is, we've seen him bust the big play occasionally, so I think he has some juice in him still.
Sure. Yeah. And I mean, I'm going to go back here because I actually like a lot of these picks here. The Chubb pick, I'm more of a tier guy. I do have him ranked a one ahead of Henry in my picks, but yeah, I do have a love affair with Nick Chubb here too. I've got Austin Eckler there is a really, again, very nice value. Josh Jacobs there, I think, again, all these are really, it looks like just for your draft, you just like let everybody fall to you, and he just came at a really nice price. Exactly. Because it almost feels like after the first or second round, like it almost feels like a small like cliff right after every one of your picks sort of goes off there. Yeah. Give us a quick shot about your last three.
Yeah, so Daryl Henderson, again, I think he's going to be undervalued. Everyone's expecting Cam Akers, but what if he doesn't get 20-plus carries a game? And if he gets hurt, then Daryl Henderson is obviously the guy there. So I think he can have some standalone value. He's just a dart throw. If it works out, great. We've seen him be productive. I think there's talent there. Gio Bernard in the 7th round, he's the pass catcher. Dave said it for Tom Brady. He's going to be used. I think that, again, if you're in best ball drafts, your last pick in the 18th round, draft Gio. See what happens. You really don't lose out with that kind of pick. And then the last pick, Todd Gurley, that's more of just a shout out, RIP, pour out the 40. Just honor the boy for what he did for so long. He's done, unfortunately, but especially if he goes to Detroit, it's really not a good situation there.
Eckler's the pick of yours that stands out. He had a 19% target share, and the 8 healthy games he played with Herbert. Only 2 goal line rushes. That's the question. One of them being that awful carry in hurry up with less than 5 seconds to go instead of calling a timeout or spiking the ball from Anthony Lynn that we all recall. Right. But if he gets the goal line carries under a new regime that didn't draft Josh Kelly anyhow, like literally top 5 ceiling.
Yeah. And I don't like to always compare teams historically over separate coaching staffs, but it always seems like that pass catching running back, even though in that Chargers offense, whether it was Woodhead or it always seems like they have a strong pass catching running back that they're using, and even though they don't get the touchdowns most of the time, they're always usually putting up a nice high floor with that receiving ability. And that's exactly what you want. I'm going to go into mine real quick. I started off with Kamara at 4. I don't think much needs to be said there. He's a really great pass catching running back, which I think makes him kind of a game breaker in these half PPR and PPR settings, and PPR even more so. Joe Mixon is a guy who's it looks like he's getting the 3-down work this year. And I think that as he was getting healthier before he hurt the foot there at the end of the year, I thought that he was playing pretty well. I wish I could have talked to Matthew about his status, although it seems like from what I've seen that Mixon's looking okay here as far as injuries are concerned. Miles Sanders, I believe that Kenny Gainwell's probably not going to be incorporated all that much this first year as a 6th-round pick. There might be some betting in, but I still imagine that Miles Sanders gets a large enough amount of that work that he's going to be worth it there. As we get into what is that pick 2021 there, somewhere in there. Looks like pick 20. Went with Trey Sermon. I really do like his fit with San Francisco, the Shanahan system, and the draft capital there is right on for me. They traded up to get him. And I know that they can pretty much make it work with just about any running back. San Francisco has pretty much shown that. They'll go with undrafted. They'll sign a contract for a guy who might not last more than a few games in the season. But I think it's a little different for me when they're willing to trade up and put the draft capital down on a player, which is not something that they have done in the recent past. So I think that Trey Sermon, while he might not be the guy right away, he's definitely got that upside to be a league winner if he hits. David Johnson, for what pick is this? We got 20. Wow, I can't do math. 32, 36. There we go. 36. At 36, I think that's great for him. I do think that he'll probably get a majority of the carries and the touches there. Although Houston is kind of a dumpster fire, but you're not even getting him in the top 30 running backs, so I'm happy with him there. Devin Singletary, I know it's really close between him and Zach Moss, but I actually do kind of prefer Devin Singletary a little bit. It might be that there's a changing of the guard, but I'm actually willing to bet on the talent of Singletary than I am over Moss at this point. Rashad Penny, I don't think that he's going to have a lot with Chris Carson going forward, but, if he gets hurt, he does have that draft capital like we talked about. And he has shown that he can be productive when he gets in there. And I went off with Ramondre Stevenson. Maybe, he's a guy that can just be that LeGarrette Blount type that we're looking for, that bowling ball that's always seemed to be a part of that Patriots offense. And they're always going to use a committee there in New England like they do. But, I don't see why it couldn't be Ramondre. Going in with White, and it'll be a mess, but he'll probably have some productive weeks this year. And let's that concludes our draft. Although Dave, you know what, we're gonna have you throw your information out to everybody, but I want to hear those last couple picks from you.
So where did I leave off? That's the question.
I think you left off where you'd be at Moss now. Yep.
All right, so I'm just looking for running backs with a pulse and a chance to catch some passes in the PPR league. Not that Moss is one that's going to do a lot of that, but I go back and forth on who's the better running back in Buffalo between Singletary and Moss. I was a fan of Singletary when he came out from FAU. And when I watched Moss, I kind of saw the same thing. Like he was, at least at Utah, a yards creator. And I like that about him. But honestly, this Buffalo offense, it's going to revolve around Josh Allen still. Oh, and they brought in Matt Breida. It makes me wonder if Breida might actually be. I don't know if I can even say it with a straight face, but maybe like the best one. Listen, that offense. If it's
lean into it
around Josh Allen, and he's going to continue to throw at the pace they did last year, they need somebody who's explosive, and Breida can kind of do that a little bit. So maybe he ends up being the best one there. If we were to go another round, I bet Breida would have gotten picked. Or maybe 2 rounds, Breida would have gotten picked. But he's someone who I think does carry some value. But until that actually happens, I think Moss is the best bet there. Certainly profiles as the better short yardage goal line guy for all 2 of those opportunities that he will get in 2021. Cohen's a shot in the dark just because he could be a decent change-up back in Chicago. I don't really see him taking a ton of work away from David Montgomery. I agree with what was said earlier about Montgomery. That he's got a chance to be that main back there, and Cohen's just kind of like a part-time guy. Might even be a pick that I wish I had back at this point. But Gainwell, the Nick Sirianni has kind of been fun to watch at press conferences because he kind of looks like he doesn't belong up there. And when someone said, "Hey, does Gainwell remind you of Nyheim Hines in Indianapolis?" He was like Nick Sirianni should not play poker because he doesn't have a poker face at all, because he was like, oh yeah, he's just like Nyheim Hines and we're going to use him just like Nyheim Hines. So, okay. If Kenneth Gainwell is going to be the passing downs back for Philadelphia someday, he's worth a pick this late.
And that was the big news today, that apparently their running backs coach thinks that it's the death pretty much of the every down guy, which that's basically like subtweeting Miles Sanders. Like that's who he was talking to. And they have all these guys in place, Gainwell being the pass catching guy, like you said. And of course, Boston Scott behind Sanders that actually made me immediately go drop in my RB best ball tiers, Sanders to like still like RB 21, 22, but I was much higher thinking that he had an opportunity to be the guy. And it doesn't seem like that.
Well, what if I told you, John, that he was going to end up being in the Jonathan Taylor role in Philadelphia? That might make you pump him back up there a little bit. And I wonder if that's what Sirianni's thinking, because I feel like, poker face here is just going to take what happened in Indianapolis and try and replicate it as best as he can, with some quirks, obviously, for Jalen Hurts as a runner with the Eagles. And so I think there's no choice for him but to look at Miles Sanders and say, okay, that's my best running back. That's not a foundation guy, not even a feature guy, but a primary guy. And then he finds a role for Scott, for Gainwell, for Jordan Howard, maybe. But I think he can be okay. It's just a matter of how much work he can get week to week. He might max out at 15 touches.
And that's the question we're all trying to ask ourselves, right? Because the Eagles are literally a boom or bust to the very bottom of the basement team. We know Zach Ertz is not going to be there. Thus, Dallas Goedert's going to be an every down tight end in that third tier, second tier, depends where you put Kyle Pitts. I have him in a tier of his own personally. Jalen Hurts, legitimately, no hyperbole, has QB1 upside, averaged 12 carries per game in those 3 full starts. And then you get a Heisman winning wide receiver, and then another first round wide receiver we've already forgotten about in Jalen Reagor, who was very good 2 years ago when he wasn't playing with a true freshman quarterback in Matt Dugan in his final year at TCU in the slot now. So he has a logically higher floor as well. Having said that, the schedule is pinned up against them. They actually are the only team in the league with a 4-game stretch this year, which includes the Chiefs and the Bucks scattered in there with only 17 days rest in between. They play 4 straight games of short rest and then play 5 of 8 road games after that. And then remember, the Eagles have 4 picks in the top 2 in the first 2 rounds next year. They are looking to add a high-end quarterback. And if Hurts does not literally blow them out of the water, he's gone. And I so want him to succeed, not just for fantasy, but he's just a fun player we need in the league to add power into the NFC, because the AFC took all the murderer's row of quarterbacks outside of Brady. But it's just an uphill battle, which is why the Eagles, you're either in or out.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's funny. I felt like the Eagles were, it was like, it almost felt like they were saying like, yeah, we're rebuilding, but like had their fingers behind their back, like all off season. Like they were just like, we're rebuilding. But then it was like, okay, I want to make sure that Jalen Hurts doesn't have any competition as a quarterback this year. I want to make sure, we're going to draft we're going to draft an elite receiver in the first round and trade up for him. And so it's really interesting. I thought, up until before the draft that they were just kind of tanking. They would see what Hurts was going to do, obviously, but they were kind of just like gonna, they might have drafted a little more at need, not that I guess they do need a wide receiver though, but I don't know if I would have traded up for it. But yeah, now it seems like they're fully going for it. And yeah, you're absolutely right. It could be a huge boom where they end up winning the division or something like that. Or they could just, I could also see them like winning 3 games, and it's there's like no in between. All right, guys, this has been a really fun RB consensus mock that we had tonight. And I know everybody here in the draft was saying how they've never done anything like this. I actually would encourage everybody out there to try, and even if you don't have 8 other people that you're doing this with, but just take the time to go through and do this yourself. This is sort of what this whole show is about, getting through the strategy of drafting and breaking it down one position at a time, or even, we're going to be doing a lot of different kinds of drafts here, sleeper drafts and flex drafts and things like that. Sometimes it's better to break things down by position or break things down into smaller increments that can really help you focus on all those parts of your game that you can hone up for when you actually need to draft. So let's sign off. Dave, give them all your information.
Like my social security number?
Well, if you want that
credit card number, actually.
Yeah.
I'll just take
let me get a
make sure you're doing it right. Yeah.
So you can catch me on the Fantasy Football Today podcast. We do episodes, it seems like every day. We also have a smaller podcast. It's a micropod. It's 5 minutes long every day called FFT in 5. So you can get downloads on what's happening, like real quick hitting stuff to help you with your leagues. And whenever there is breaking sports news, I highly recommend logging on to cbssportshq.com and watching the free streaming sports news and analysis site from CBS Sports. It's amazing. It'll make you feel like a smarter sports fan. It'll make you a winner against your bookie. And it's good free stuff, all at cbssportshq.com.
All right. Next up, Jeff Bell. Go ahead, Jeff. Give us your information.
Yeah, you can find me with Football Guys. You can find me with Fantasy Pros, and you can find me with Going for Two. I have 2 pods that I do, the Devy Royale on Tuesday night at 9:30. And then I also do, it's called Coming Off the Edge. It's just a group of my friends that we get together at 7 o'clock on Tuesday nights as well. So Jeff Bell, for whom J Bell tolls on Twitter.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
All right, Jim Nastic. Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, man. You can find me at Twitter at GoldJacketQBs. I write for True North Fantasy Football. It's TrueNorthFFB.com. And I podcast for the True North Network on Tuesday nights. 8 p.m. Eastern is the time we're changing it to for the Gold Jacket podcast.
All right. John Daigle. Go ahead, John.
My best ball tiers are live at NBCSportsEdge.com or RIPRotoWorld.com if you want to type that in as well. You can also subscribe to A Good Football Show on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. That's where we have 2 off-season shows, but here in about 2 or 3 weeks when training camp truly begins, we're going to bump it up back to the 3 podcast schedule until the regular season. And then on Twitter, at not J Daigle, because I was a donkey in 2011 and won an anonymity. And so it's kind of hard to find me, but at not J Daigle is where it is. And I actually just posted before I jumped on here, my top 250 CSV. So if you're playing in 12-man best ball tournaments, you can actually just download it from the link I have, pop it into your rankings, and then it shows you where I consider guys ADP at compared to actually where they're going while you're drafting.
Oh, that's really cool, John. I like that.
It took too much work because I'm a boomer. Too much work.
I hear that. Okay, yeah, and I think I've got that it's still bookmarked as Roto World on my phone.
It redirects, and I swear to you, for as long as I work for the company, I will never let them take that redirect away. I still type in Roto World.
That's right. It's hard. It's really hard not to. I mean, I was devastated when the app went down, though. I will say that.
The app, by the way, there is an app now, NBC Sports Edge, and it's very, very good. There were lots of conversations behind the scenes about make this thing better, and it actually came out very, very good.
I will say I have that, and I do like it, but I will not call it Sports Edge.
That's fine. I agree.
All right. Let's see. Steve, Toroni. Steve, go ahead and give us your info.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Mark. It was great drafting with you guys. You guys can follow me at FFProfessorST3. I'm the host of the Hot Take podcast. My co-host is Josh Daly over there. We're actually giving a Scott Fishbowl entry away tonight, actually immediately after the show at 9:30. So hop on over to my Twitter. We're going to be live streaming that. And then in season, I'm a ranker and writer for GuillotineLeagues.com.
I'm going to have to reach out to you about those guillotine leagues, Steve. That's for sure.
Do it.
All right. And last but not least, the very reasonable Kevin Tompkins.
Thanks for having me on. Now you can find me at KTompkinsII on Twitter. Do a podcast with Scott Fishbowl 9 winner Gary Haddow and Andrew Cooper called Lightning Round. You can find it on YouTube, Spotify, everywhere you get your podcasts. I also do some writing for Fantasy Pros as well as BallBlast Football and Fighting Chance Fantasy as well.
And I'm Mark Shue. You can find me over on Twitter at Primetime Mock. And if you're not here already, come on over to YouTube, subscribe to our channel. Next week, we are talking wide receivers with a whole new group of fantasy analysts. I can't wait to be there. Hope to see you next week at 9 o'clock Eastern this time. Have a good night, everybody.